All right. Well, this week's episode of The Bridge was okay, albeit not quite as exciting as the last two. Really, it was a time where they're gearing up for the final few episodes of the season series. I must have British TV on my mind, but I digress. They mainly use this episode to thicken the plot, as it were. They are really outlining where everyone's loyalties lie. Everyone's gearing up for their final move of the season. And one, there were a few things I really liked about this episode. First of all, was the opening, where Fausto Galvan issued that video ultimatum against Sebastian because he had Sebastian's daughter tied up in a shed, and he was getting his henchmen to work the camera while he made this kind of video message where he threatened Sebastian's daughter. And basically, there was a solid 2 or 3 minutes. Well, maybe not that long, but you get my drift. There was a solid length of time where Fausto Galvan and his henchmen were kind of working out how they were going to do this. They were blocking things out. I mean, his henchman was like, "Move a little to the left," and Fausto Galvan was like, "Why?" And the henchman guy said, "Well, we don't want him to ID the hideout." And Fausto was like, "Oh, good point. Okay, I need my gun. Here, give me my gun." Wait a minute, it's not loaded. Cut, cut. So there, you never really see that in movies and television shows where they're kind of making this threatening video message. I mean, can you imagine if in The Dark Knight that if we actually saw the Joker preparing to make that video message and kind of getting everything ready and set up and kind of preparing his voice, maybe doing some vocal exercises like true, that would have robbed him of some menace, but it brings this world down to earth a little bit. So I really enjoyed that scene, probably more than I should have, but what can you do? But also a big theme going throughout this episode was why the DEA's goals seem to be conflicting with the CIA's goals, and how basically no one really looks good when the DEA agents. Sorry, I have the hiccups. When DEA agents were gunned down at Red Ridge. I mean, everyone is still recovering from that. You don't just move on from that type of shootout. So one point that Sonia actually brought up that I actually thought was really interesting is when talking about Eleanor, and why she was being arrested, and when Sonia was requesting an interview with her, Sonia said, she killed a kid, and no one really seems to care about that, and that got me thinking, that's true. I mean, no one really seems to care about that anymore. Really, the overriding goal behind trying to arrest Eleanor throughout this entire season has been so that they could eventually use her to get to Fausto Galvan. I mean, get the smaller fish to get the big fish. So really, they're not trying to seek justice. They're trying to bring down this cartel leader. So so actually, I think that was a pretty interesting statement on the nature of some police cases. I mean, even if there is some justice involved, that's not really the primary goal. The primary goal is to use this smaller fish again to get to the big fish. I mean, even in good movies, that's essentially what they were trying to do with the character of Lau in The Dark Knight. Again, raising the example of The Dark Knight, but when they were going after Lau, who was in charge of the mob's money, they were going to use him to get to the rest of the mob. So really, it almost kind of goes into a really interesting gray area that this show seems really intent upon tackling. This show has always tackled gray areas. And speaking of that, there was also the instance where I forget his name. I think Lindier or something. The Thomas Wright character and Eva, they were kind of waiting outside Captain Robles's house. Captain Robles being one of the guys who raped Eva, and Thomas M. Wright's character, he's basically he's basically sworn to do right by her. He's basically sworn to tackle all the guys responsible, and then Eva having second thoughts upon seeing that he has kids and really wanting to move on from this. And speaking of moving on, we finally saw Thomas M. Wright without his beard. So that whole subplot has gotten, I think, more interesting as the season has gone on. In fact, I may have said in a previous video, I'm more interested in Eva than I ever was in Annabeth Gish. I know that's not really saying much, but there you go. And really where we left off, Marco was seemingly going after Fausto Galvan with the Marines by his side. Meanwhile, Matthew Lillard and Emily Rios, Daniel Fry and Adriana were still digging deep into everyone's motivations, digging deep into the story. They were at the DEA agent's funeral. So yeah, like I said, a lot of this episode really was just kind of set up. There wasn't really a whole lot of character moments to be found here, except for a few moments, both of them involving Sonia. One was when she interviewed Eleanor, and they really got to exchange words for the first time in the whole season, which I found pretty interesting. I liked how both of their cards were being laid on the table, how they were really trying to, how looking at each other, they were really trying to guess what the other was about, what was motivating the other, and really sizing each other up. So I thought that was a really well done scene. And another was when Sonia went to visit her mom, who is revealed to be the bum chick on the street who was high, and Sonia briefly visited while she was high before. So I thought that was an interesting introduction to, and an expansion on Sonia's character, seeing her mom essentially being this street bum. Whether or not that will go anywhere remains to be seen, but I can't really imagine they would introduce that without having some intention to follow it up at some point. Then again, they kind of did that with the underground passages in season 1. You know, the underground passages that Annabeth Gish's character inherited from her husband on the property, so to speak. They kind of introduced that, and then it became more vague, and then it became virtually non-existent this season. So I don't know if they're going to abort that. I can't really imagine that they would, though, considering this is the mother of the main character, or one of the main characters. So yeah, this episode of the Ode to the Bridge, like I said, it was not bad. It was just set up, and if anything, it has me looking forward to the final 2 episodes of the season, which I guess that was the whole point.